behind a white wall here?
Yeah,
Yes, and
it's dark matter or
I
white matter. I don't
think we
know.
are live.
Ooh.
Yes, we are live. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. So, the state of matter. We're doing a live stream. Are you ready? Are you ready for some dark matter shit?
Sure,
Let's
sure.
begin with a quick introduction. Gielo, do you want to start? You're the first one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my name is Chelo. I'm the product manager of Home Assistant. My job is to make things easy for everyone, and matter is not the simplest topic for me.
You kidding?
Hey, my name is Stefan. I work mostly on infrastructure things at Nabucasa. I work on the operating system, on supervisor, but also on thread and lower level matter things as well.
And that leaves me. I'm Marcel. I'm the other bold guy from Namukasa. The guy that you see regularly is Paulus, but he decided to go to the CES in Vegas. I'm just asking myself why not join this live stream in Las Vegas. There's nothing, but yeah, he preferred Las Vegas. I don't know why. So I'm involved with Matter every day on a daily basis. I work at Namukasa as a project lead for Matter. Um, so like 90% of my time I spent on working on the Matter project within Home Assistant. Um, Today I'm gonna tell you with Gielo and Stefan all about what Matter is, where we see the big benefits, and we try to answer every question you have in the chat. So yeah, let's go. I
Yeah.
already told you a bit about it, that we're funded by Nabukasa. Me, Stefan, and Gielo, we're working at Nabukasa. It's a company that was founded to make the development of Home Assistant sustainable. Nabukasa makes the Home Assistant cloud service, which lets you connect to your Home Assistant instance remotely. When you subscribe to Home Assistant Cloud, we can use that money to employ more people to work on Home Assistant full time to make it better for you. So, what are today's topic? Um, our topics are split into two sections today. At first, we will tell you why we are so excited about Matter, what's our vision on Matter, what Matter is, what Thread is, it's not the same. And we have the second part of this live stream reserved to go more into the details, more in depth. Stefan is going to tell you all about Matter in detail and Thread all about in detail. And we're also doing some hands-on with setting up the SkyConnect as a thread border router. And we finalize the live stream by answering all the questions you may have. We announced the live stream last week, and then we asked a few of your questions already. We've answered them at the end of the stream. So let's start on our vision, no matter why we're so excited about it. Because we see a lot of potential. Like we work on this every day. Yes, it's a new protocol, but yeah, we see a lot of potential. We want to share this excitement with you guys. In short, Matter is the new smart home standard everybody is talking about. It's the open source smart home standard that allows you to locally control smart home devices in a secure and privacy friendly manner. What makes Matter so special is that it's a collaboration not only between the device manufacturers, but also with all relevant smart home ecosystems. So device manufacturer can finally focus on making the best quality device and leave controlling the devices up to the smart home systems. Which is new, right? Because we're used to like 80 different apps on our phones. It drives us crazy, and now we can finally have like choice to purchase the right device, and then we can control it. Matter is developed under the umbrella of the Connectivity Standards Alliance, which is pronounced as CSA in short. And Nabukasa is also a participating member. And as a participating member, we have a voice in the development of the Matter specification. And we can pay for our membership thanks to your subscriptions to Home Assistant Cloud. So let's start by saying a big thank you that we as an open source product can actually have a voice in all this. What we like the most of Matter is that the specification as well as the reference implementation are both open source from the very beginning, which is like amazing news. Another big benefit is that Matter is developed from an implementation first approach, where the specification is only written if the implementation is actually proved to be valid, which is like groundbreaking in the industry. This is in our eyes a much better approach than writing some theoretical specification and then let manufacturers work around these specifications when actual devices are being made. Next to Matter being open source, one of its core principles is that it's a fully local control protocol. And still, a manufacturer may decide to offer some additional feature in their own app, which most likely uses the cloud, unfortunately. But if that vendor goes bankrupt or decides to stop or alter the cloud service, all you may lose is the additional added feature from that specific app or cloud service. The device itself will keep on functioning with every feature that is mandated by the Matter standard for that device type. So yeah, we are excited about Matter because it perfectly fits our open home vision of privacy-friendly products, which gives you the freedom of choice to select from any manufacturer using the Matter standard. And it's sustainable because they will keep on working, not only today, but also 5 or even 10 years from now. Another really big game-changing benefit of Matter compared to all the protocols we already know is the so-called multi-admin feature. This is maybe already a bit technical, but this means that a device can be controlled by up to 5 Matter controllers at the same time independently. This makes it easy to try Matter in whatever ecosystem you already have, for example, a Google Home or Apple Home, without being forced to start all over when you want to try Matter in another home. Or maybe you want to use just 2 ecosystems at the same time, like Home Assistant, Google Home. It's all possible. You do not have to grab all your devices, reset them on another platform. You can just run them side by side. So in short, these are like what we see the top 5 benefits of Matter. It overcomes the limitations of existing protocols. It's open source. It's developed by many companies and individuals. And it's a joint effort of both the device manufacturers and the ecosystems. It will eventually cover a wide range of device types. And the most important, it's local by design. I'm almost going to say hallelujah to this. This is like really great. So I hope you got excited about this as well. Now, let's see what Matter actually is, what Thread is. GLO is going to explain this to you, and I hope like a sensible manner that's not too technical, right?
Me? Yeah, so before we deep dive into Matter, I want to take a few minutes to explain what Matter is. Matter is very new compared to other standards, and it packed a lot of new terminology that revolves around Matter. Routers, bridges, controllers, you have Thread also. And I just want to make sure that you have a nice view of the full Matter ecosystem so that you can navigate it, and maybe you can also help yourself with some purchase decision if you have any things to buy, and also understand the rest of the presentation. Just before I start, I dream of a world where I don't need to explain you this because everything would just work. But today, because everything is so new and we are pioneering something, trying to push the envelope, and you too also, just by looking at watching this live stream, it's because you think it's important. You need to understand a bit how it works if you don't want to get lost or be lost, sorry. There is a lot of ways of telling this story. of what Matter is. And most of the time, I feel that the stories or the ways that you find online are very overwhelming because Matter covers a lot of ground. It's like actually pretty huge standard. And so I designed a story that introduces concept one by one. And I think it's going to be a bit simpler for you to follow. I hope so. Give me a sec. Yes. So before I start, what we are going to do is we are going to start by another smart home standard. That's going to be Zigbee or Z-Wave. In fact, it's going to be any generic mesh network that you already have in your home. So let's say Zigbee. And then we are going to understand a bit how it works. We are going to look at all the issues, the limitations, and the drawbacks of this kind of protocol. And then we are going to fix them. We are going to fix them one by one. And at some point, we are going to reach what Matter is. That's more or less the goal of this section, so that you understand a bit where it's coming from, what it is, and what it is not. Just before I start, I'm going to use some pretty generic terms for some of the devices and devices of this generic mesh network that said that it's Zigbee, but it's not really Zigbee, because the terminology is not the same between Matter and Zigbee, and I don't want to introduce terms that I'm going to scratch at the end and explain you the real Matter terminology. So I'm going to use some pretty loose terminology, and at some point I'm going to stop and I'm going to label everything in the way Matter is naming things. I hope that was clear. By the way, if you do not have neither Zigbee or Z-Wave, don't worry, I'm going to explain a bit how a mesh network works anyway. And so let's start. This is a blank screen. So this is a mesh network that you may have in your home. On the device side, there is two types of device. You have devices that are capable of routing data coming from other devices. For example, here you can see a plug and you can see a temperature sensor. This temperature sensor is able to route data through this plug. And you have devices on the outside of this mesh network that are not capable of routing data. Most of the time, there is a clear cut between the two. The devices that are capable of routing are powered. They are usually always on so that they can route information. And the devices that are battery powered usually are not capable of routing. They have very nice sleep capabilities that are allowing them to stay online for multiple years on a single battery. On the top, you have a radio that I represented by like a radio. Again, like I'm saying that for now, I'm using very generic term and very generic illustration. You have a radio that is plugged to a controller. So for example, on Zigbee, that would be like a Zigbee stick plugged to your Raspberry Pi and then a few devices. Before we start to talk about the issues, the drawbacks, and the limitations of this, I just want to start by actually pointing out what is good, because there are a lot of things that are very nice about this mesh network, and we are going to find them on the Matter ecosystem anyway. So there, more or less, there is like three main advantages of these things. The first one is that the radio protocol that is represented by all of these orange lines is designed to be extremely efficient. It is low bandwidth, meaning that these devices are not transmitting a lot of data. And this is why these devices are able to stay online for multiple years on a single battery. The second main advantages of this is resiliency. If you have a lot of nodes in the middle that are able to route devices, one of them can go offline without compromising the whole consistency of the mesh. And this is pretty good so that you don't lose half of the device if one of the nodes goes offline. And the last main advantages of this mesh network is reach. If you can see, for example, these three devices are technically not reached by the radio, but they are able to communicate with the radio and so the controller, because they are using different devices to route the data. So this controller is able to read the data coming from these temperature sensors because it hops to this light and to this plug up until the radio. And it's able to also control that light because the signal goes to that plug before reaching the light. So this is the main advantages of this. And again, it's pretty strong if you have a Z-Wave network. If you have a Zigbee network, you know more or less what I'm talking about. So the main, okay, so let's start now picking limitations and drawbacks of this system. The first one is for most of the users, no, for not most of the users, but for some of you, and actually me included, this, like all of the devices are part of the living area. This is where you live. This is your living room. This is your bedroom. This is where you want to track temperature. This is where your door is. Whereas the controller is usually where you get internet. So usually you have internet coming from somewhere in your home, maybe like on the backside of your garage. you will have your ISP box, you're going to put like a small router, a server, and then you're going to put your home automation box. And because the radio is just something that you plug on your controller, you're going to plug it there. And so that means that the radio is maybe at one of the worst place possible in your home because it's pretty far away from the device that it needs to control. And also it is in a place with a lot of other radio interference. Wi-Fi, maybe Bluetooth, many things crammed in a very small space, pretty far away from the devices that you want to control. So let's fix that. Again, so as I said, we are going to fix issues one by one. We are going to build a standard together, more or less. And eventually we are going to stop because we will have reached what matter is. Even if all of the steps that I'm taking are a bit hypothetical, we are just building something together. We are fixing a mesh network, and eventually, yes, we are going to reach matter. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this radio, I'm going to unplug it from the controller, and I'm going to put it closer to where the devices are. So it may look like this, more or less. We have the mesh network that is untouched. We have the radio that now sits, for example, in your living room, and it's connected to your local network. These 3 dots are just representing your local network. This one may be, for example, a switch where the controller is plugged into, like an Ethernet switch. And these 2 may be like Wi-Fi access points or anything that you have in your home that is representing your local network, your Wi-Fi network. So now this radio is basically sitting at the border of the radio world, and it's transmitting the data through Wi-Fi to the controller that is somewhere else. So now we are fixing 2 problems. It's closer to the devices, and it's on a place with less interference from other things that are happening somewhere there, like, I don't know, a Wi-Fi access point, some Bluetooth devices, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's fix another issue. There is only one radio there, so if it goes offline, if it's malfunction, then your whole mesh goes offline, and you cannot control anything, you cannot read anything. So let's put multiple of them. Let's just put 2 radios, so that if one goes offline, then everything works. If the other one goes offline, everything works. We are fixing one single point of failure of ZigBee or Z-Wave. Usually your stick, if you remove it, nothing works, almost nothing works. So now we have multiple devices that are sitting at the border of the mesh network that are bridging that mesh network to your local network, and so the controller can talk and control these devices. Here you can see that there is only one controller. Marcel actually talked about that, so there is no spoiler. There is only one controller, there is only one admin of the network. That means that if you want to switch this controller to something else, for example, this controller may be like a white label ZigBee hub that you bought a long time ago because you wanted to test ZigBee. Now you want to move to Home Assistant. You need to unpair all of your devices from this controller to replug them on Home Assistant. And so let's introduce the concept of multiple controllers that are all admin of the same mesh network. So a controller can add devices and then share them with the other controller so that they have access. If this controller goes offline, then the device that was added is fine. It's going to be able to be controlled by other controllers. We are again fixing not a single point of failure, but we are fixing one limitation of this mesh network, which is the fact that there is only one admin. All right, so this is looking pretty good. If you want to build a standard that is supposed to fix all standards, like Matter, it's supposed to be more or less like the overarching standard of the future of the smart home. There is another limitation that we have to worry about and fix, is the fact that, as I said, this radio protocol has been designed to be extremely efficient, low bandwidth, so that these devices can stay online for a long time. And this means that usually the bandwidth on this radio network is pretty limited. So this means that as a manufacturer, if you want to create devices that require more bandwidth, for example, a camera, a vacuum cleaner, or a TV, then this is kind of a closed door. Like you do not find for sale like a ZigBee camera, because it makes no sense, because ZigBee is not cannot transmit the full stream of a camera. The same thing for a vacuum cleaner or for a TV. So now I'm going to start adding devices that are outside of this radio network. So that let's imagine that we have a standard, which is Matter, that can be used in conjunction with a nice mesh network for battery-powered devices, but that can also be used with just regular Wi-Fi devices if you need a bit more bandwidth or if you just want to create a Wi-Fi devices. The last thing that not the last thing, but another thing that we need to worry about if we want to create a standard that is going to stick for a long time and for everyone, we need to consider that we have other devices that are already in our home, right? We have smart home. You have some devices that are not Matter compliant today. You may have, for example, some SwitchBot curtain controllers, or like some Philips Hue lights that are controlled by Zigbee. And so let's find a way for these devices to reach the Matter ecosystem. So I'm going to represent them like this. We have some devices, they have small red crosses because they are not Matter compliant, that are outside of this Matter world. And then we have hubs that are going to bridge these devices to the Matter world, so that this controller can talk Matter, and this bridge is going to just translate Matter into whatever, this vendor-specific way of controlling devices. And for example, the same thing for Philips Hue. That's almost the end of the, this is almost the whole Matter ecosystem. I just need to label things now, which I'm going to do in a minute. Before I want to label things, I just want to make one last step that may feel a bit useless for now. It's going to be useful at the end for Marcel and Stefan, because we are going to demo that. I'm just going to take this whole mesh network, this whole radio network on the bottom, and I'm just going to duplicate it. So I'm just going to put 2 of them. This is just to say that you may have multiple of them in a home, and actually at the start, right now, you may need to have multiple of them because we have some limitations between vendors, which we will explain you afterwards. And so this is it. This is the whole thing. I'm just going to take this whole schema, and I'm going to start naming things. This is Matter. The big black box is Matter. Matter has 2 main words, because Matter is what we call an application protocol. We don't really care about name. It's a language. It's a language that our devices are speaking, and this language allows them to operate, interoperate, and able to communicate in between each other. There is 2 main words in Matter. There is the Wi-Fi word, and there is the Thread word. Thread is this famous radio protocol that I was not mentioning before, and this is the equivalent, even if it's a bad analogy, of like the Zigbee word. That's kind of it. It's a mesh network. You have Matter over Thread devices that are battery powered. You have Matter over Thread devices that are plugged, that are able to route messages just like Zigbee or Z-Wave. The main difference is that there is not one Zigbee stick or Z-Wave stick. You have radios, and you can have multiple of them at the border of the Thread network. And these devices that sit at the border of the Thread networks that are linking the Thread world to the Wi-Fi world are called border routers, Thread border routers. This is why they are called like this. So here we have like already a nice redundancies compared to Zigbee or Z-Wave. It's the fact that one can go offline and the whole mesh continues to operate. In the Wi-Fi world, you have this Thread border router. So that's the other side of the story. They are linking the Thread world to the Wi-Fi world. So you have these Thread border routers. And you also have devices that are just implementing the Matter application protocol, so the language that these devices are speaking, on another support, which is Wi-Fi. And these devices are usually more bandwidth heavy. So a camera, a TV, a vacuum cleaner, and so on and so forth. And on the top, you have the controllers, the admin of the Matter network. And you can have multiple of them. Here I put like an Apple TV and a Google Nest Hub and a grid. And then on the border of the whole Matter ecosystem, you have other ecosystem. So for example, here I have a SwitchBot that's an ecosystem that is Bluetooth. And on the other side, I have a Hue ecosystem that is Zigbee. Regardless of this, if the manufacturer wants, he can create what is called a Matter bridge that is bridging the capabilities of that network into Matter, so that this controller can talk the language that it knows, which is Matter. And this is just a translator. It's going to translate this Matter language into whatever else comes on the other side. Usually, these devices are hub. So hub for the ecosystem. This is the hub for Philips Hue, meaning that it's the central point to manage your Philips Hue lights, your Philips Hue remote. But this hub also acts as a bridge for Matter. And it's the same thing for the other side. On the other side, we have a switchpod hub that is going to act as a central place to manage your switchpod devices, and also act as a bridge to bridge these devices into the Matter world. I took a few, not simplification, but I took a few freedom when I created this diagram, just to make sure that we understand it. And I just want to make sure that I'm not confusing some people. I, on purpose, took different devices for the Thread border routers and for the controllers, because I really wanted to show you the Thread border routers that are at the border of the Thread world, that are linking this Thread world to the Wi-Fi world, because I think it's very important to understand what it is. But what I want to mention, because it's important, is that for most of the big brands like Google and Apple, the Matter controller is also a Thread border router. So if you have an Apple TV, for example, this Apple TV also packs a Thread antenna and is also able to act as a Thread border router at the same time as the Matter controller. So this one is kind of here, but it's also here. And the same thing for the Apple HomePods. They are Thread border routers, but they can also act as Matter controllers, so they should be also there. But I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to have like these two devices separate so that you understand a bit the roles. The Thread border routers is the one that packs the Thread radio, because it's able to link the radio world to the Wi-Fi world. And the Matter controller is just a piece of software that is able to control and administrate the whole Matter ecosystem. Actually, I put the green, the Home Assistant green, on purpose, because I saw some comments about the fact that because the green doesn't pack any antenna, then it's not Matter compatible. With green, you can do many things with Matter, because you can use different Thread border routers in order to reach the Thread world, and you can also just use Matter over Wi-Fi devices if you want. Did I miss anything before going to the commissioning, Matter and Stefan?
Maybe we're talking about Wi-Fi, but what we mean is like your local area network, right?
Yes, your local
like
network.
Ethernet device, Wi-Fi devices, but we
Exactly.
just use it, name it Wi-Fi, but we mean both.
Yes. I'm not a tech guy, so I may say some mistakes. So yes, I just want to the point I made was very important. If you have an Apple TV, don't think at the end of this presentation, oh damn, now I need to buy some HomePod minis to be able to bridge the Thread world. No. Like if you have an Apple TV, then you already have a Thread radio on it, and you can act as a Thread border router. And it's the same thing on the Google side. If you have a Nest Hub, for example, it has a Thread border, a Thread radio, and it can act both as a controller and as a Thread border router. All right. So, okay, moving on, because it's not over. It's almost over. Okay, hang on. But I still have like a few things that I need to present to have like the full picture of the Matter ecosystem. And we need to talk about pairing devices, adding devices. Like you unbox devices. And you want to add it to your networks, whether it's Thread or whether it's Wi-Fi. Okay, so you are trying to build this nice ecosystem, like this nice standard Matter, and you need to figure out how you're going to make your users, so which is us, commission devices, be able to add them on the correct networks. Whether it's Wi-Fi or Thread, the thing that the device needs to do is to join the network. Whether it's your Wi-Fi network, whether it's your Thread network, but it needs to join a network. In order to join a network, you need to pass, in a way, you need to give the device the credentials. On your Wi-Fi, it's going to be your password. On Thread, it's also called credentials. It's just that you don't know them because they are generated when you start the Thread network for the first time, but there is credentials. And what has been chosen by the CSA, the alliances that is governing Matter, is to use your phone as a way to do the commissioning. So you have a phone there, which is also important. You have a phone, your phone knows the Wi-Fi credentials, your phone knows the Thread credentials. I'm going to come to that point in a minute, because it's not that simple right now, because we are, again, in the beginning, in its infancy of Matter. But simplification, your phone knows the Thread credentials, and your phone is going to pass that information to your devices that when you are trying to add them, whether it's Thread or whether it's Wi-Fi. I just have one arrow there, but whether it's Thread or Wi-Fi. And the way they do that is by Bluetooth. So that's the last thing I wanted to introduce, which is very important. all of the devices that you see on this graph, the end devices, which are the Matter over Wi-Fi devices or the Matter over Thread devices, are also capable of communicating via Bluetooth. And this is only used for what we are calling the commissioning, which is the first part when you pair the device. The phone is going to push the correct credentials, whether it's Thread credentials or Wi-Fi credentials, to the device, and the device is going to join the correct network. And then you don't need Bluetooth anymore. Actually, and then the device stops broadcasting over Bluetooth and then broadcast over either Thread or Wi-Fi. Let's talk a bit about limitation, because Marcel is going to explain you afterwards, and Stefan also, but just want to make sure that we are setting the expectation right, because it's not really something that we control. It's something that the whole industry is trying to solve. Today, Apple devices is able to get Thread credentials from Thread networks that have been initiated by Apple. This is why you have an iPhone there, and this is why you have HomePod minis there. And it's the same thing on Android side. So an Android phone is able to get Thread credentials from Thread network that have been initiated by Google. This is why I have the Nest product line there. This means that if you have a Apple TV or an HomePod mini and an iPhone, then you're good to go. If you have an Android phone and a Nest Hub, then you're good to go. If you have none of these devices, you can still use the Matter part. And if you have a mix of both, then it's going to be a bit complex, which we are trying to solve anyway. And Stefan and Marcel will talk to you more about that. But just so you know, the flows that works well today are per ecosystem, because we are relying on SDKs that are on the phone to do the commissioning. The last thing that I want to add on this picture, SkyConnect. We have SkyConnect, which is a small Thread radio that we are selling. And I just want to show it where it stands on this diagram. The SkyConnect, so the green or the yellow or a Raspberry Pi or any hardware where you run Home Assistant OS can be used as a Matter controller, because again, the Matter controller is just a piece of software. On our side, it's called the Matter server that is able to administrate the Matter ecosystem. So you can use your green with any Thread border router if you have Thread devices, whether it's these ones. If you want, you can also use it with SkyConnect. SkyConnect is a radio. And we have another piece of software called the Open Thread Border Router that is going to act as a Thread border router. Just like the HomePod is acting both as a Matter controller and a Thread border router, you're going to be able to plug the SkyConnect into the green Raspberry Pi, whatever you want, and it's going to act as both. So at the end, you may have 3 Thread network for now, because we are struggling to merge them. Actually, Marcel and Stefan, I think that it has been announced this week that...
Yeah, just fresh from the press, how they call it, like the Thread group, the alliance behind the Thread radio protocol has announced that they're gonna solve this issue, because this is a big issue, right? Because I have an Apple HomePod, I have a Google Nest Hub, and they all form like separate Thread networks. We as Home Assistant tried to solve it a bit, we failed. Stefan's going to show you what parts of that work, but yeah, most important, what parts do not work. But it's going to be solved by the industry for us. So in the end, these separate Thread networks will be merged together, so it will be no longer relevant if you have like an iPhone and a Google Nest Hub or an Amazon Alexa with an iPhone. It will just all work together as one big happy Thread network. But we're not there yet. So we focused our story of today of what parts are working today.
Yeah.
Even though maybe some experimental feature exists to enhance it or to go outside these paths, I think to keep the story straight, this is like nice to explain it.
Okay, like I saw just one question that I want to answer. When I said SkyConnect, it's just because it was a simplification on my side. The yellow has exactly the same Thread radio as the SkyConnect. Yeah. So could the yellow act as a border router? Yes, the same way as I'm saying that a green and a SkyConnect can do it. It's the same hardware behind. So yes, your yellow can act as a Matter controller using the Matter server, and as a Thread border router using the Open Thread border router add-on. I think it's an add-on also.
And you don't need the SkyConnect, because that's maybe very important to mention again. You do not need the SkyConnect for Matter, because Matter is like the control protocol. You can talk to Matter devices anyway.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that was the whole Matter ecosystem. I have prepared a small, like a few product pages, and I'm just going to browse product pages. The goal is just to, I hope that you have a better understanding of the whole Matter ecosystem. That was my goal. And I'm going to browse a few pages, and I'm going to show you a bit what I see, and we will try to place them on this big diagram so that we understand a bit what they are. Nothing is endorsed, by the way. I just browse a few Matter product page. In fact, we don't have a lot of Matter devices today. So, okay, so first one. This is a Matter over Wi-Fi device. So this means that it's going to be commissioned via Bluetooth, as always. It's going to join your local network, and you will be able to control it with a green without fretboard router. You don't need fretboard router for this one. You just need a phone that has Bluetooth for the commissioning, and that's it.
And Wi-Fi also.
And Wi-Fi. You need Wi-Fi, yes. All right.
There are people without Wi-Fi nowadays.
Exactly, yes. Okay, what about this one? Like, that's the new Sonos module. Same thing. Well, it's the same thing. It's a Matter over Wi-Fi module. So exactly the same thing. It's going to be commissioned via Bluetooth. It's going to join your local network, and you will be able to control it with a green or even a Raspberry Pi or yellow or anything without any fretboard router. This is also pretty clear. These are like good product pages. I like because it's pretty clear. This is Matter over Thread device. So this is the new Aqara window and door sensor, the P2. So this one, if you buy this one, then it's going to be commissioned via Bluetooth again. It's going to connect to a fretboard router. So you will need a fretboard router for this one to be able to work. I have like only 3 more. This one, Eve Smart Plug. Okay, we have the Matter logo there. Okay, Matter over Thread. So that's also pretty clear. This is a, I think that's the only one I found, Marcel. This is a Matter over Thread devices, but this one is also a mesh extender because it's always on. So again, like
most powered devices are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the rule of thumb, more or less, which like manufacturers can do whatever they want, is if it's battery powered, it's going to be Thread because then otherwise you're going to change the battery every 6 months. And if it has very high bandwidth, it's going to be Wi-Fi. But then in between, it's very fluid. So this one, for example, is powered and also low bandwidth. They had to choose between Thread and Wi-Fi, and Eve choose Thread. Actually, Eve, I think, is only making Thread devices. So this one is a Matter over Thread device. All right. SwitchBot Hub 2. I showed it in my presentation, but I just want to show you a bit how they say it, the hub that matters. Haha. That's the joke.
There are no jokes about Matter, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So here you can see more or less like that. I think that's pretty clear also. You have like Bluetooth devices on one end, infrared devices on the other end. I didn't know that they were doing infrared devices. And then it's bridged to Matter. So this means that this is the device that bridges all the ecosystem to Matter. Everything else is not Matter. Speaking of which, last one, the Aqara dual relay module T2. There is the Matter logo there. And also there is something about Matter there. And this is a Zigbee device. This is nothing related to Matter. If you read the fine print, it's just that it can connect to a hub that can act as a Matter bridge.
Yeah, watch out for examples like this, because if you're browsing for Matter devices, manufacturers are like cheating with the product pages, and they shout Matter, but if you read the fine print, then you will find out that the device needs a bridge.
Exactly.
The SwitchBot Hub page like just now, but I think 2 months ago they were shouting Matter everywhere, and everybody was confused.
And like so, this is what I was going to say. Like, I'm actually pretty happy. I'm just going to remove the slide for 1 second because I don't need. I'm actually pretty happy about that because, like, when I was preparing the slide, I thought that I would find a lot of product pages that were bad. Let's say bad, but I don't want to pick on anything, right? Like the industry is evolving, and I'm pretty happy about that. But like a few months ago, lots of these devices that could be bridged over Matter, were advertising Matter everywhere. So the curtain controller from SwitchBot was like Matter. Actually, it's a Bluetooth device, right? It's just a Bluetooth device that has a hub that can act as a Matter bridge, but that's about it. All right, let me just finish my presentation by just wrapping up what we learned. Matter is what we call an application protocol. It's a language that devices are speaking to communicate to each other, being controlled by multiple admins, and so on. This language has two supports that are called transport protocol, Thread and Wi-Fi. Bluetooth is used for commissioning a device, and that's it. So most of the devices, all of the devices have a Bluetooth connection. They advertise themselves via Bluetooth. The phone, which is the next point actually, the commission is done via a phone that knows the network credentials, whether it's Wi-Fi or Thread. The phone pushes the credentials, and then the device is connecting through the correct transport protocol, Wi-Fi or Thread. A Thread border router is the one that sits at the border of the Thread network, and that is linking the Thread world to the Wi-Fi world. You need a Thread border router if you want to use Matter over Thread devices. You don't if you want to use Matter over Wi-Fi devices. Some powered Matter over Thread devices are extending the network, like a bit the Eve smart plug. And you have Matter bridges that are used to bridge non-Matter ecosystem into Matter, like a SwitchBot ecosystem or a Philips Hue ecosystem. And the last thing is that you can have multiple admins that are controlling and managing the same network and the same devices. And now we are going to see this live with Marcel, except if we have questions, by the way. I don't know this one. This one could be interesting. Why is Matter not considering to use Bluetooth as a transport protocol? I'm putting you on the spot because I actually don't know.
It was in the very first kind of protocol announcement. It was even there, but I think they scrapped it basically. I think especially with Bluetooth, quickly the question becomes like, do you operate it in a mesh environment or do you do like point to point? And yeah, I think it didn't work well to basically run IP over Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot something. I've been rehearsing this presentation 2 times and I forgot something. Give me 1 sec. I just want to share it again because you're going to hear that. And if you don't know about Matter, I think it's important. All of these lines, all of them are IP-based. The Thread word is also IP-based, which is new compared to Zigbee and Z-Wave. And this is why you have dotted lines there, because we don't know and we don't care because it's bridge over Matter. But like all of these lines are IP-based, even the Thread word, which was not the case on Zigbee or Z-Wave. Yeah, it was just a small thing, but I just wanted to mention it. Did we have other questions that we want to
yeah, and otherwise we can like skim through the questions and do some questions after the session. Like we have some room for answering questions anyway. So if there are popping up some questions, just hear us out, and then if you have any questions after the stream, just ask them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them if we didn't already answer it, because like we have like a lot of information. We try to build it up, like we try to make an explanation first, explain about the benefits. We're also gonna tell you about the drawbacks at this time. Stefan is going really in depth and do some tutorials how to set things up. So I think we're covering a lot already.
Yeah, just one, because it's going to be pretty fast, and also it's going to answer something that we didn't say. Can you provide this diagram image? We are going to make a blog post about all of the things that we are discussing so that people that are missing the live stream can catch up. And I think that on the blog post, you will have access to that diagram.
Yeah.
Maybe not all the scrappy steps in between because they make no sense, but at least the end diagram, you will have access to it, yes.
Scrap out our faces because just the relevant information. I'll take over now. I think another important step is how to use Matter in Home Assistant today. Like now you know a bit what Matter is, what Thread is, that Matter and Thread are the same. You have a basic understanding, so let's see how to use it. I got you hyped up. Like why I believe in Matter and why Nabucasa and Home Assistant believes in Matter. And now I want to set the right expectations. Matter support in Home Assistant is still in the beta stage. Not every feature is there. The documentation is not final. We are only 1 year on the way. The base functionality is working fine, but we still have a lot of work to do to make the Matter integration feature complete. That's why we still call it a beta. It has a few reasons why we call it beta, but the main reason is we're not completely confident that it's like ready for prime time because we're missing a few features. And the Matter specification itself is still early and expanding. So we're shouting about all these new device types being added to the Matter specification, but at this time we only have a basic set. For example, we can control a light bulb, but we cannot yet support any scenes or other adaptive lighting or whatever, like advanced features of this light bulb. That will all follow in a specification as well as additional device types. So keep in mind, I see some really bad media articles at this time that people are comparing like apples to oranges, like Matter didn't make his promise, it's not working, and I think, yeah, but you're comparing it to a standard that already exists for 20 years. This is just 1 year on the road. So you need to like do a fair comparison. We as Home Assistant had a lot of focus on getting the whole foundation stable. And now we're slowly moving focus on adding features and device support. And I think the most important features we want to add is like make it more user-friendly, because we have been in the technical phase until now, and we see people struggling with setting up devices, and we want to make this whole onboarding of devices more user-friendly now that we are more convinced about the standard ourselves. The first year, the industry itself has also been working on squashing bugs. But now I just like visited some web shops in the Netherlands, and now I can see Matter devices popping up everywhere. So the industry has been waiting a bit, squashing bugs, making it stable. The implementation got out of beta for vendors, and now you can see actual devices. And that's why the product tour of GLO is so helpful. If you're going to hunt for Matter device yourself, now you know, okay, if I want to start with Matter, I can look for the Wi-Fi logo, for the Matter logo. That's an easy way to get started. The product pages are like cleaned up. It's getting more stable. That said, not every scenario is already supported. There are some support scenarios that are supported really well, and some others are still considered very technical or experimental. Like, for example, setting up the SkyConnect. The SkyConnect is a... I have an echo from somewhere. Is it gone? Yeah. Sorry. The SkyConnect is a nice way to have the thread border router added to Home Assistant without having to use like a Google Home or an Apple Hub or a Samsung Hub or whatever. But we're still like polishing the development, and we do not yet support every route. We do have support for it if you're like technical enthusiast, and Stefan is going to tell you all about it. But like, we like to tell you upfront that there are certain scenarios that are really good supported and some are not yet. A few ground rules. If you're going to start working with Matter devices, it's designed to work on a consumer residential home network. Like, I see many people in the Home Assistant community, me myself, by the way, we have like Unify or TP-Link Omada setups with multiple VLANs and whatever. But yeah, Matter was never designed for it. It was designed for a residential flat network with a single subnet. And yes, Matter will completely break on those enterprise-like setups. So the best thing you do is like flatten it or see a way that your Matter devices and Home Assistant are all on the same flat network. Why it is, that's like really technical. Stefan is going to tell you all about it, but like our main advice is like flatten your network, try it again. And another one is, we forgot to mention it in the story of GLO. GLO did say it is IP based, but it's IPv6 based. So the whole Matter protocol is IPv6 based. It doesn't mean you need to set up like IPv6 from your ISP, from your internet provider, but it does mean that IPv6 needs to be enabled on your home network. Also important to know that Home Assistant operating system, like the full version of Home Assistant, is the only officially supported installation method. You could even run the container part of the Matter server if you want, but you may run into compatibility issues. So for now, we're telling like, if you want to run Matter, use the Home Assistant OS. If you are like technical experience, you want to run it inside a container, you may, but if you run into issues, we may ask you at debugging to like set up a virtual machine or whatever to run the OS, just to rule out any issues with the Docker Container OS. Also, a very important step that's not everybody knows, but now I think the story of GLO explains it very well. You need an Android or iOS phone to commission new devices. It's because we need the Bluetooth part. Also, and that's also now very clear from the story of GLO, you need border routers if you want to use thread-based Matter devices. So if you want to go start with Matter, I will recommend like start with Wi-Fi based Matter devices, or if you already have a border router, use that. These are the current supported and stable scenarios. Adding a Wi-Fi based Matter device, that should just always work. If your network meets the requirements and you are running Home Assistant OS, then it should just work without any issues if you fit like these network topology standards, like IPv6 enable, no VLANs, no MDNS forwarders or whatever, then this should always work. Unless it's like a very crappy device or whatever, but no. If you want to use thread-based Matter devices, then you will need a border router, or if you see in the picture from GLO, multiple border routers, because that extends the mesh, makes it more robust. But important to realize, your devices will only be available to the controllers you paired them with. So what we hear a lot is like, I'm not going to use an Apple HomePod because then the device will also be available to Apple, or in case of a Google, it will be available to Google. That's not true. Just see the thread border router as your Wi-Fi access point. Your Wi-Fi access point is just routing the traffic, but it's not doing anything with the traffic. Now, see the border routers that way too, and you're all good.
I think that's something I forgot to mention. I think this is like super important. Like, if you have just a green and HomePod Mini, then you can commission devices that are thread-based only on green. Green will be the only admin,
Yes.
and the HomePod Mini will act as a router, like just your Wi-Fi router, but for thread. That's it.
Yeah.
No,
That I have no better way to explain it, but like it's just a device that sits on your network border, like, and routes the traffic. That's the best way to explain it. And the controller, in this case Home Assistant, it has like the certificates and like the encryption to talk to the device, but nobody else. Another like very stable scenario is Matter bridges, like the Akara M2 is a Matter bridge, a switchboard hub 2. Those should just work with Home Assistant. And to mention it again, the SkyConnect as a thread border route is still in development. So how does it look like? Because there's a lot of waiting involved, I pre-recorded it. Let's just enlarge this video for you. To start, if you want to install Matter, you've heard us talking about the Matter server and it needs to run an add-on. You do not have to deal with it, because if you install the Matter integration within Home Assistant, it will automatically install this add-on we're talking about, the Matter server component based on the official SDK. So if you go to integrations, devices, add integration, you search for Matter, you can see it mentioning here, use an official installation method, and it will install the add-on in the background. Now, this will take a while, depends on your hardware. If you have very fast hardware, this will be quick. And then you're ready. Matter will be installed, ready to add some devices. We will share all these steps in the blog post that will be following up, and we will enhance our documentation later with all the steps. Okay, I'm going to focus on one of the scenarios, which is add a Wi-Fi based Meta device. This is very important to know. If you're going to onboard Meta devices, there are like two different scenarios to follow. You can either have like a brand new device from out of the box, or you just resetted it, or you have a device that's already been commissioned to one of the Meta controllers and you want to share it. First, I'm going to focus on a brand new device. Like I went to the store, picked up a Meta device, unboxed it, and I want to add it to Home Assistant. Some devices have like to enable a pairing mode, just like with Zigbee or Z-Wave mode. It will be in a sticker or a manual how to put it in pairing mode. But most devices, just when you plug it in or remove the battery for the battery strip for the first time, it will be in pairing mode for like 1 minute, 10 minutes. I don't know exactly, but they will be in pairing mode for a while. Just confirm that you have a Wi-Fi logo on the box, a Meta logo on the box, just like GLO showed. Then we are certain that we can add this device. And you have installed the Meta integration, which I just showed you. And you have a phone with the Home Assistant companion app. Also pretty important to mention is that you need a full Android with the Google Home app installed. It's a bit strange maybe that you say, I'm going to add a device to Home Assistant. Why do we need the Google Home app? That's because Google decided to put this Matter SDK part inside like the Google Home app as a requirement. So you need to make sure you have full Android, not F-Droid or whatever, but just the full Android with Google Home app installed. Even though we're not going to add the device to Google Home. And on iOS, the specification is a bit more simple. You just need version 16 or higher of iOS. Another one, because we're adding a Wi-Fi based Meta device, some people decide to like separate the Wi-Fi networks between like a 5 gigahertz and a 2.4 gigahertz version. Make sure that you set your device, your phone, to the 2.4 gigahertz network first before you start commissioning. Otherwise, the commissioning will fail, because Meta devices are for now 2.4 gigahertz only. So if we have that set, the steps for the thread-based Meta device are almost the same, except for the fact that you need the thread border router. We're repeating it over and over because this is a common mistake. If you see the thread logo on the box, then you know for a fact that you need the thread border router somewhere. This means if you are using an Android phone to onboard a device, you need either the Nest Hub version 2, so not the version 1, but really the version 2, or the Nest Wi-Fi Pro. Those are the thread border routers from the Google ecosystem. If you're using an Apple iPhone to do the commissioning of a new device, then the options are a HomePod Mini, a HomePod version 2, or the Apple TV 4K. Those are the options for the Apple ecosystem. And another one, maybe it's like a bit obvious, but if you're going to commission a device, make sure it's in close range of both the border router and your phone. So not take the device with you on the other side of the house and the border router somewhere else, because then commissioning will also fail. I've pre-recorded a video for this as well, so we can like skip a few steps. You will go, just like adding the integration, you will go to the Devices and Services page within Home Assistant. You click the Devices page, click Add Meta Device, and this is where it gets interesting already. I paused the video for a bit, because adding a Meta device is as simple as scanning the QR code. So in this case, it's a power plug, and on this power plug there's a QR code. And I'm going to scan this QR code. And you can see that in this case, iOS recognized it's a power socket. It's like setting up the commissioning. We're mentioning commissioning a few times. I don't know if we already explained what commissioning means, but like pairing in a new device in the Meta world is called commissioning. So we're used of calling it commissioning, but I don't know if we explained it already. The Meta device will be added I'm going to skip through because this can take like a minute or something. This is a step that I want to explain for a little while. You see this pop up coming up on iOS, and it's a bit ridiculous. So that's why I zoom in on it. iOS is asking like, how do you want to call this power plug? But like, you can call whatever you want here, but it's never used. So this is just a bug in iOS. That's really annoying, and many people ask us. I put in a name here, and it's not working.
I guess it's because it's the
ignore
same
it.
flow. I guess it's because it's the same flow if you use Apple Home, and in this case, they
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's a bit, it's really weird. But like, skip this. Just press continue button, and then you will see the device page opened within Home Assistant. You have the control here. You can control it, and if you want to actually change the device name, you can do the regular Home Assistant method in the top right corner. So that was it. Adding a device, using an Apple iPhone to Home Assistant. This was a Wi-Fi based device, but the same would be if it was a thread-based device. And I would have like a HomePod or multiple HomePods in my home to act as border routers.
I saw the question at some point, like, is the flow different for Wi-Fi and Thread? And the answer is no, the flow is the same. It's the requirements that are changing.
Yes,
So
the requirements are changing.
Yes, exactly. So the on the Wi-Fi side, you have less requirements than on Thread because you need to have the Thread border router to bridge the two worlds. But the flow is the same.
Yeah. And if you do not have a Thread border router, then it will just pop up because Apple will just complain, I do not have a Thread border router. Google will do the same. It will just be the requirement of the OS. Hold on. I did the same for the Android device. This is the iOS. Oh, hold on. First, before we like show the Android side, I want to make a small comment. Because on Android, if you maybe you've already seen it, if you have a new Meta device close by to an Android device, it will pop up like a big ass pop up in your face, like I found an Android, I found a Meta device. It is actually possible to use this pop-up to commission a device to Home Assistant. Stefan will explain it to you. Do not get scared by this pop-up, but Android just uses like a more aggressive way to show you it found a device and it wants to add it to the Google Home ecosystem, which is actually kind of nice because now you know that it's actually found the device. And on iOS, it's more like passive. I just noticed that I do not have the video for Android ready because I have the iOS video twice, but on Android it's more or less the same. And furthermore, in this presentation, Stefan has actually the Android flow, so you're not missing on anything. It's more or less the same. I wanted to zoom in on this one because this is like super important. The QR code on the device can only be used once. Only when you add the Meta device for the very first time, like to the very first controller, then you use your QR code. Because we see this, like this is one of the, we see it as a benefit, the multi-admin, but this is one of the issues with multi-admin of Meta, that people just are scanning the QR code again on the next controller, but it's not possible. And it's actually a security feature because the device has already been controlled by the first controller. And this first controller has to give consent that it may go into commission mode again. Otherwise, like everybody could like re-adopt this device again. That's like a bit user unfriendly. So, but you have to know. So remember, the QR code can only be used once. Either if you are unpacking it from the box or you've just factory reset the device.
By the way, you will see we have plans to make this experience a bit better on Home Assistant. Right, this part is like what is working today. We'll show you a bit what we want to do in the future. This is the part that is bothering me, and we want to fix it.
Yeah,
to make it a bit
and
better.
It's bothering everybody because this is like wrong on every ecosystem. Like on Apple and Google, you can even try to scan this QR code, and then it fails, and then you have to find out, oh, this code was already used. So that's a bit, it's like a gotcha. Okay, I'm gonna now like share some details about another like scenario. And this other scenario is, okay, the device has already been commissioned to another Meta controller, which can be Google Home, Apple Home, Samsung Smart Things, Amazon. You have multiple Meta controllers already. And then you want to use that Meta controller and also add it to Home Assistant. The process for this is the same whether it's thread or Wi-Fi. It doesn't matter because like it already has like access to the network. If it's a thread device, it's already using the thread network. So for example, I saw some question in the chat, what about Samsung or Amazon? Well, if the device is using the thread network for Amazon, you can use this method to add it to Home Assistant and use the thread network from Amazon with Home Assistant. So this is like a reversed view of it. The same steps apply as when it would be a new device. You have installed the Matter integration. You have a phone with the Home Assistant companion app. You have the Google Home app installed. If it's Android, if it's iOS, you need version 16. And I just want to clarify this a small bit because we call this sharing sometimes because it's easier to tell it's sharing a device, but actually it's telling the device to reopen its pairing mode again. Because if you use this approach, the second controller, and this is in this instance Home Assistant, will have independent control over the device. And you could actually decide to remove it. So yeah, you could like remove it from Google Home and it will keep on working in Home Assistant. This is also a common mistake or in the Matter world. It's all still clear, I hope so. Otherwise we'll address some questions later. I've also recorded how this could work. In this case, this is an Apple Home. I've added like an Eve energy plug to the Apple Home ecosystem, and I want to share or like recommission this single device to Home Assistant. I need to go to the details of this device within Apple Home. In Apple Home, it's called turn on pairing mode. Each platform has its own wordings, but somewhere hidden in the details of a device, you would find this feature. In this case, it's turn on pairing mode. I received a code. Did you see? This is going a bit fast. I received a code. I can press the copy code. The device is now entering in commissioning mode for, I believe, 1 minute. Stefan has the exact details, but I believe it's in pairing mode for 1 or 5 minutes. Then I need to use this code in Home Assistant and go to the same flow as we did before. Add device, add Matter device. But now I'm going to ignore the QR code step because there's no QR code to scan. If I would scan the QR code, it would fail. This is one of the issues we're talking about with multi-admin. Instead, I'm going to press the More Options button above. And you can see iOS already discovering the devices nearby that are in pairing mode. In this case, I was sharing the Eve energy plug, so I click that. I paste this code I received earlier to Home Assistant. And this will also take a while. This will take a bit longer because this is a thread-based device and that's a bit slower than a Wi-Fi-based device. But in the end, at some point, it will work. And this is the annoying pop-up again about the name that's not used. But in the end, you get the ID. It's added to Home Assistant the same way as I would have added a new device. And I could rename it here again. I could control it. So that's the flow of adding an existing Matter device to the Home Assistant ecosystem. The video, okay. In this case, we have a video from Android, so let's show it because Android in this case is a bit different. So I wanted to show it. Why is Android different? You saw me copy pasting like this code on iOS. I do not think that's very user-friendly. I think the Android approach is a bit better here. So in Android, I'm going to click the cogwheel here to go to the details. Links Matter apps and services. And then it will just show apps on the phone that have Matter feature. I click the link apps and services button here. And Home Assistant is just listed there. I'm going to click it. There's a confirmation prompt. And it will add the device. I'm going to skip through this a bit. I believe the only difference with Android is it doesn't take you to the device page at the moment. But we're not sure if it's a bug or it should take you to the device page. But in the end, the device is added to Home Assistant. You can control it through Home Assistant. And if you want, you can remove it from Google Home. No problem. Or just control it with Google Home and Home Assistant at the same time. Then, if you remember the story of GLO explaining this whole Matter ecosystem with thread-based devices, Wi-Fi-based devices, there was another like type of device in this whole Matter ecosystem, which is the bridge. The Matter bridge to another protocol like Bluetooth or Zigbee. There are a few options available. For example, the Akara M2 hub, which is a Zigbee hub. You have the U bridge, which also supports Matter, and you have like the SwitchBot, which has like the Bluetooth curtain motors bridging into Matter. In that case, you do not scan a QR code, but you open like this, you initiate this pairing process from the app of that hub. I took like a screenshot from the SwitchBot hub, but like the U bridge or the Akara hub is more or less the same. You just look for enable Matter support or enable Matter pairing mode, or it's called like that in SwitchBot. It's called Matter setup. It will enable like a pairing mode, just like we just saw with enabling like the commissioning mode from Apple Home. It's more or less the same. So I've enabled Matter setup. I received like a QR code which I could scan, but it's a bit like awkward if I'm using this phone to open this app. So I can also copy this code, go to the Home Assistant app and do exactly the same as I did before with commissioning an existing device. I want to go back to the previous slide because I had like a small warning here. It doesn't make a lot of sense to add a hub that already has like real good support in Home Assistant. I see some people adding like, for example, the U bridge to Home Assistant. Yeah, you can, because the U bridge supports Matter, but you will be like disappointed because the U integration within Home Assistant already has like a full feature set and it's already a local protocol. So you will be going back in features if you enable Matter. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense if you have like another home automation controller which does not have a U integration, and then you could use Matter to integrate the U devices into that ecosystem. And I think the best example is, for example, the Akara hub, because the Akara hub by default is like a cloud-based integration. And by connecting the Akara hub over Matter, you make it a local integration, which is like awesome. So keep that in mind if you want to start adding Matter bridges. And I think now we have a pretty good idea what we can do with Home Assistant today, that we have to set our expectations right. If we follow like the path of using existing thread border routers, if we be careful with our network setups, I think we can have a pretty good time with Home Assistant and Matter. We have still a lot of work to do, but I think we're getting in good shape. So let's hand over the word to GLO again, because like you already saw a few like downsides and that's not ready yet, but we want to expand it. We want to make it better. So GLO, can you take the stage?
This part is going to be pretty fast. So Marcel presented like what we can do today, and you saw that it is working. It's maybe not the simplest way to add a device, and when you think about it, adding a device should be like very simple, right? It should be just adding a device. We are aware of that. We are also aware that adding a new device and sharing it from another controller is kind of the same thing at the end. Like you have Home Assistant on one side, you have a device on the other side, and you want to use it. So we are trying to make sure that we are working on that. So I'm going to present something that I'm going to call our plans for Matter in Home Assistant. It's going to be brief because I don't want to overcommit things that we're not going to do. And I hope that, by the way, it's going to answer a few questions about from a few people that I will try to point out on this slide. No, I need to click on that if I want to make the slide. Okay, so we want to work on 3 themes related to Matter. The first one is adding a device. It's too complex. You saw it with what Marcel showed. It's working, but it's too complex. We would like that everyone is able to add Matter devices, whoever they are, whatever they are using, whatever phone they're using, etc. These are big themes because, as we said, for example, we know that we have limitation with thread border routers. We are only allowing users to add devices from the phone right now, but that's a big theme. Second theme is, which is simpler, sharing devices. Marcel showed you a case where he was sharing devices from Google Home or Apple Home to Home Assistant. If we want to be certified, we need to do the opposite also, being able to share devices from Home Assistant to other ecosystem. It's kind of like a two-way thing to sharing. So we need to do that. And the last thing is that today we don't really provide any diagnostics data, whether it's the topology of the network, what thread border router is used, what network has been joined by a device, and all of these things. And we want to make sure that we have that. In terms of sequencing, right now we are focusing on what Marcel showed, but simpler, which is adding Matter over Wi-Fi devices from the companion app and adding Matter over Thread devices from the companion app, leveraging Thread networks that are managed by Google and Apple. It's a small step, right? It's not the end of the road. It's already working and we want to do it better for now.
We shouldn't have to explain like the difference between a new device and an existing device. That should be like working.
It should be like very simple.
Yeah.
Next, we want to allow users to share any Matter devices from Home Assistant to other controller, which is not possible today. And we want to allow users to see device diagnostics. For example, what network is used by the device, if it's Wi-Fi or if it's Thread. If it's Thread, being able to see basically the connection points, the nodes up until the controller. So which thread border routers, which mesh extender, a bit like what you have for Zigbee visualization. It's nerdy, but honestly, it's useful when you're trying to debug things. Later, that's kind of the dream, right? We want to allow users to add Matter devices without dependencies on iOS, without dependencies on Android, and without third-party border routers, thread border routers, sorry. And so this answers questions. I saw like a question popping up, like saying, well, my Home Assistant has Bluetooth. Why are you telling me that I need a phone to commission devices? I could use Home Assistant to commission devices because it has Bluetooth. And yes, it's something that we would like to work on. We would like to allow users to commission devices using a Thread radio, like a SkyConnect, and a laptop, and that's it, nothing else. So that's kind of like the long-term goal. Now, next, later, forever, we want to support every device types that are supported by the Matter specification. This thing is evolving. We have new device type added, new device types added. I don't know if it's every version. I don't think so, but still we have new device types.
Yeah, it should be every version, but like 1.1 was like a bug fix release, but like, yeah.
And I think like what was the last one that was added?
1.2.
No,
you mean the fridges and the vacuum cleaners?
Yes.
1.2.
Vacuum cleaners.
Now we're awaiting device type. So maybe we should be a bit careful with this because like we do not yet support every device type because the device type needs to be available on the market. We start implementing it as soon as either the vendor approaches us to work with us to implement it or the device is available in the store. We're not going to do it blind. I tried it a few times and I was like always wrong. So I just wait for a device to be on the market before
Marcel, it also gets a bit harder because it's going to be dishwasher and wash machine. So you need more space in your back.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Until
going to be
now, I have
helpful.
every Matter device in my office in the back of
Yes.
the dishwasher.
So
I
someone
don't
was
know
saying,
if
like, do you have a
possible.
list of all the Matter devices that are supported? And the answer is yes, it's behind Marcel. That's the list.
It's my office, yeah. We actually have a camera there, right? Right.
Yes, we have a camera
We
with
can-
all of the devices
Yeah.
of Marcel. Where is yeah. I still have something to show you for the now part, which is what we are focusing on right now. Before I show it to you, like a few word of caution. Even if, like, honestly, like, I'm fine, I'm not scared about that. But I'm going to show a design, which is like a prototype of how we think Home Assistant should look like for the commissioning of Matter devices on Home Assistant. I just want to say a few things. It's not final. We are exploring things. Shout out to Matthias, our designers, to have designed that. I'm just a messenger. And the point is that I want to show you how we think we could do better. All right. So adding a new device using the companion app should be simple. You go to device, you click on plus. We are starting to look for devices that are advertising themselves, Matter, whether it's Zigbee, whether it's Z-Wave. If we find something, and we tell you, like, hey, we found something. If we didn't find something, there is a big QR code scanner there that you can just pop. Or if you look at the list, there is also a search. You can just look for Matter and click on add. It's going to go to the same place, which is just the QR code scanner, because anyway, you need to scan the QR code. You're going to scan the QR code. The main difference between this QR code scanner and the one that Marcel showed is that that's ours. We are not yet handing over the flow to the SDK of iOS or Android. This means that we want to have a QR code scanner that's going to do quite a nice thing, like a nice thing just after, which is cool. Scan the QR code. We are going to understand that it's a Matter device because we want the same QR code scanner for HomeKit, for Z-Wave. We are going to understand that it's a Matter device. We are going to understand that it's a light. And then we are going to ask you the magic questions that is going to disambiguate the flow between adding a new device or sharing a device from another controller. Is it new? If you say yes, then we are going to hand over the flow to the Apple SDK or Google SDK. So in this case, Apple SDK. Now we hand over the flow. It's going to it's in Dutch because Matthias is Dutch. It's going to commission a device, and you're going to have it on Home Assistant. If you say no, we are going to tell you, okay, where do you control it from now? You will have a few options, and we are going to guide you towards how to share it, because it's a mess today, and this thing is a mess in the industry anyway, so we cannot solve it, but we can at least guide you. So you say, like, oh, I can control it on Apple Home. Okay, then you need to go there, you need to click on that, you need to do that, you need to copy a code. Okay, I have the code. Okay, enter the code there, it's done. So that will be more or less the idea of how we want to solve that.
Please share your feedback. I see Matthias is alive in the chat, so
yes, Matthias is there.
Shout out to Matthias for this, because we really like it. I hope you also like it, or you have some feedback. But like,
sorry, like one
so
thing that
much
maybe
easier.
I went a bit fast. On this screen, we want to use the Bluetooth capability of the phone to be able to scan devices. So here we are going to receive like the Bluetooth packet of the phone, and we are going to find Matter devices that are in commissioning mode, pairing mode. I don't remember the term, but that's the goal. And so the goal is just that it should be simple. And right now, it's like a bunch of options everywhere. And it should not be, right? It's adding a device. This is not the sexy part. The sexy part is automating things, right? Like there is no value there. Like it's an enabler to the value. So we want to make it as simple as possible. That's everything I have for for the future. That's the most important part. We want to continue working on what we do. We have the long-term goal of being able to use just a SkyConnect, just a laptop, no phone, nothing. And in between, we are going to allow users to share devices because that's needed. And as a continuous effort, everything that comes on the market, we want to support it. By the way, I think Marcel and Stefan, you went to the CSA and you had a nice story about that, right? You saw like a lot of brands that were using Home Assistant as a test bed because we are the one that supports the most thing, right?
Yeah, like in many companies, there are like Home Assistant enthusiasts that are like running Home Assistant themselves. So they're testing They're testing like devices with Home Assistant. We have a few developers of those companies that are contributing to Home Assistant as well. We get often a heads up that a device is coming. For example, the Eve plug, right? Because the Matter specification does not yet support like these energy readings officially in the specification. But we were in contact with one of the developers of Eve, and we're like, okay, it would be awesome to have these readings in the Home Assistant already. Oh, no problem. And we like exchange like the information. So energy readings will be added to the specification, by the way, in 1.3, I believe it's scheduled. But we went ahead and we just exchanged like the custom attributes to share this information. And yeah, it's the same for we actually went to one of the motion blinds company, like the Eve motion blinds. There's a company behind, and they're actually using Home Assistant to do testing of like the curtains, and it's really cool. Like I was like, wow, this is like unit testing with Home Assistant of like some hardware. That I was like completely like flabbergasted about it. So yeah,
Right.
we have fans everywhere, and even in the CSA event, there are company like showing their device within Home Assistant because it's so flexible. It's
Yeah,
great.
it's nice.
So let's continue. Stefan, I think you're up.
Yes, there was actually one interesting question I just saw. Paul asked, I think I cannot enable it here. Paul Schultz asked, are Matter devices generally easy to factory set? So it's usually quite similar to things like Zigbee. You press a button for a longer time. What is interesting is that the standard, I'm actually not sure if it's mandatory, but it's definitely encouraged to add reset information to the device database, which is online, the DCL, the distribute, where also the certification information is stored. I expect that in the future it will be basically when you scan in theory, if you scan the QR code, you could probably actually fetch this information and then tell the user, okay, that's how you actually reset it. So there's I'm not sure how well it will work, because these things always depend on the companies basically contributing this information correctly. But in theory, that might actually be a nice feature in the future. Let's see. Okay, yeah, let's jump into the next part, which is using Home Assistant, SkyConnect, or Yellow for communication with thread-based devices. So yeah, if you have one of these two devices, slightly adjust this here. Yeah. So if you have one of these two devices, they have a wireless module in it, and it's actually the same type. It's both Silicon Labs chips, which is in these devices. They, by default, get shipped with a Zigbee firmware. So you can use it as a Zigbee controller. And that also works stable, it's reliable, it's well tested. But they also support Thread. And so in this section, we are going to talk about how to use the thread functionality to enable Matter over Thread devices. So there are two firmware options to enable Thread. So there's the dedicated Thread firmware, and there's the multi-protocol firmware. We generally suggest to use the dedicated Thread firmware, especially for Matter, just because it is one less variable in the whole ecosystem. It's just the pure Thread firmware, and yeah, makes it more reliable. The dedicated Thread firmware is provided through the OpenThread border router on the website skyconnect.homeassistant.io. You'll find a quick how to actually install it. So on the documentation, you'll find enable thread support. So this is the pure Thread or the dedicated Thread firmware option. And it's basically quite straightforward. Just make sure that Zigbee is actually disabled and ignored. So Zigbee or ZHA won't interfere with the radio, and then install the add-on. So the advantage of the dedicated thread firmware is also that we can use the latest version of the OpenThread border router straight from the upstream open source project, and the latest add-on actually supports also a feature called TREL, Thread Radio Encapsulation Link. I'll get back what that means shortly. The multi-protocol firmware will stay there, and if it works for you, we will continue to improve it. It is an option still. So this is more or less the architecture. So you usually basically start with this setup, right? You have the ZigBee firmware installed on your SkyConnect or Yellow, but you can jump to multi-protocol or thread, but you can only install one of those. And if you use the thread-only firmware, you use the OpenThread border router add-on here. And both the Silicon Labs multi-protocol add-on and the OpenThread border router basically have a component inside which then talks or the other way around, the Home Assistant core talks to these add-ons to then basically have the thread credentials stored in the core. I'll get to that shortly. What is notable here is that there is no direct connection to the Matter server, basically. The Matter server is really just an IP-based thing which uses thread, but it doesn't directly connect to these other add-ons. Okay, so back to what is TREL or Thread Radio Encapsulation Link. So when you have a mesh network, what you can do with Thread, and personally, I think that is really a huge advantage of Thread compared to other mesh networks like ZigBee or Z-Wave. You can have multiple border routers. So you don't have a central controller, but you have like just border routers, which basically bridge that IP network to your main network. Let's imagine there is the main network is outside of this mesh, right? So this is only the thread network with the border routers here. So now these border routers, they are usually connected to the same network, or that's the topology which is supported normally. So when those are connected to the same Wi-Fi or Ethernet connected network, they have a much faster link between them. And what basically TREL does is it uses that link to also forward IP packets. You need to know that when you are a thread controller or a Matter controller outside of the thread network. So the Matter controller wants to talk to, let's say, this device over here. So if you want to talk to this device, the Matter controller doesn't know which is the best entry point of your board into the mesh network. It can't know which is the best entry point into the mesh network because the mesh network's topology is basically only known by threads itself. It's not something which is shared outside. So it doesn't know, well, I don't know how I can reach that device fastest. So what it does, it just picks basically one of the border routers at random. And let's say it picks this border router, then that border router can basically say, okay, I could ship that package over this link over here, and then it goes here. But this is a much longer route here because it's also going all over the slower thread radio, right? It could instead use Ethernet or Wi-Fi over here, going to this border router, and then basically take that path. So the TREL feature enables this kind of ideal entry point into the thread network, and it makes a difference, especially for larger thread networks. So if you have like, I don't know, two floors, for instance, or just like bad radio connectivity in between the devices, then this is a big advantage.
It increases the bandwidth, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, you really save bandwidth inside the mesh because you can shorten the path here, right? And of course, this bandwidth is much bigger than basically. Okay, so we're going back to using Thread on SkyConnect or Yellow. So once you've installed the OpenThread border router add-on, what will happen is that a new network is being created, and it is by default the preferred network. The network name will be Home Assistant, and the OpenThread border router will be part of it. So basically, when the add-on is installed, a network is automatically created. Now, to add devices to that thread network, because the current commissioning step is using the SDKs from Google or on Android and for Apple on iOS, then because we use these third-party SDKs, we need to basically import these credentials onto your phone. And our companion apps are doing that. And currently, this is only supported on the Android side. We cannot basically copy the thread credentials to the iOS credential store at this point. It should be possible. It might come in the future, but there are always some caveats. I come back to those shortly. But let's just focus on, okay, I have a SkyConnect, I have an Android phone, so how can I import it? So the steps are basically, it's usually done also automatically before you add a device, but I recommend to use the manual steps. Just open your app, go to the companion app settings. Under troubleshooting, you have the sync thread credentials option. And once you press this button, what it will do is basically synchronize the thread credentials in both directions. But if the SkyConnect or the yellow is your first border router, it basically means the thread credentials from Home Assistant Core will be in on your Android phone. And when you onboard your next thread-based device using your Android phone, it will use that network. Now, what we've seen, what several times happened for people is that they basically get this error here, can't connect to the thread network Home Assistant. So this is the thread network which is usually created by Home Assistant. If you see that issue, just go through these steps again. So go to the same places and check what happens. If you get added network for this device to Home Assistant, and if you run it twice and get the same added network from this device to Home Assistant again, then something is wrong. Unfortunately, the API is really weird because the Android API doesn't throw an error in that case. It just says, yeah, I did add it, but it didn't in reality. It only looks good if you do this twice, if on the second time it really confirms to you this device uses the same network. So if it confirms to you that it uses the same network, then you're good. Then you know that Home Assistant Core and Android is truly in sync. So the Home Assistant Core preferred network, so this one, and the thread network which is stored in Android is truly in sync. So watch out for this result here if you are using the thread network on Android. If this is not the case, so if you're on the left spot here, that you always get the same message, the only way to get out of it is basically clear the thread credential store. And in Android, the thread credentials are stored in the Google Play Service storage. So you need to go to Apps Settings somewhere there, enter Google Play Services, and then in the Google Play Services storage option, click on the Clear All Data button. I don't think it is.
Was this
deleting...
the nuclear option that cleared like your wallet and stuff?
So what it does, so from my experience, what I've observed, it clears the credit cards in your Play Store wallet, like in the Google Wallet. So that's kind of not nice because you need to re-add your credit cards again. So do that before you go to the stores. I once I tested that, I really ran into the store next day and I actually was stuck at the at the cashier stand. Damn. Well, so yeah, be careful with that. It's a kind of nuclear option, yeah. But I know that it works. So once you did that, usually then the first time it will say added again, but then you will basically jump to this being in sync. So yeah, the whole thread credential synchronization story, I don't go into details here. I don't think it makes sense. The gist is from Android, we can import, like meaning we can from the core use credentials and put it into Android. On iOS, we cannot do that. The other way around, so if you have already a Google border router, or if you have Apple border router, you can export or like move the credentials from these existing border routers to Home Assistant. I actually,
if we have some time left, we can like show it or not.
Yeah, so this is a screen recording, but this is actually how you would do it on iOS. So if on iOS, the way it's implemented, you need to go to this screen in the iOS app, and you get this
How do you get
import
that screen?
credentials.
Because I think you missed a step, like
Okay.
configure
I
like.
mean, yeah, I don't have an iOS right now here, but it is basically, in your
integration.
Yeah, in your devices and services.
I think
and
many
then
people do not know
under
this
thread,
exists, so
you
it's
go
good
here.
to explain this.
Then configure. So here you will have an extra button basically. So this is on my browser, right? So I don't have this extra button. But on iOS, you will have that extra button.
Stefan, can you explain us why? So sharing credentials from the core to the device is going to be used to push these credentials to one step back. Sharing the credentials from the core to my phone is going to be used so that I can push the credentials from my phone to the device, and the device is going to be able to connect to the SkyConnect. Why do I need to do the opposite? Why do I need to share the credentials of Apple or Google to the core?
So what you can do with that is then you can basically add SkyConnect to a network which has already Google and Apple or Apple border routers on it.
So you can have like a Thread border router with like two on-pod minis and a SkyConnect.
Yeah. So basically, you get into this case, right, where you have the so this is then the preferred network in this case, right, and then you can add your OpenThread border router to that.
Like this.
That's your home.
Yeah. So this is the setup with Apple border routers, right? And when I would press, so it could be that it is a separate network still, and then you just tell, hey, OpenThread border router, please jump onto that network, because at this point we have the credentials to this network, so we can add our OpenThread border router to this network
to extend the mesh. And we actually support TRL now, like, so
yeah, we support TRL. I think Google does not yet, at least, and Apple does. Yeah. One caveat here though. So for me, this combination wasn't all that stable. I had basically devices being not reachable from time to time. I don't know why currently. We need to dig into the reasons why these devices go offline. So as soon as both devices were in that same thread network, for me, the thread devices kind of lost connectivity from time to time.
I think it's important to say that this is experimental, right? This is why we call it experimental. We're still tweaking it. We encourage you to test it out and give us feedback how it works for you. But if you're like,
so I get to that
solution, use the standard Google or Apple border routers.
Exactly. Right. This is kind of my thread credentials conclusion here, right? So if you have Google Thread border router, it's an easy to deploy option. You can buy several of these devices. It's known to work reliable also with multiple devices. If you have Apple Thread border router, use iOS. It's easy to develop several border routers. It also supports TRL, and it's known to work reliable. Now with SkyConnect Yellow, standalone, it is possible with Android. It's unfortunately not possible with iOS currently. And you can add it to existing Google and Apple thread networks, but this is really not well tested. But yeah, if you like digging into IPv6 issues and stuff, then I mean, it's an interesting problem to figure out what's the problem here. But yeah, so we're continue to work on these options. Yeah, we want that SkyConnect and Yellow is an open source thread border router option. So this is continued to be worked on. Yeah, I'm not sure if we have maybe a question in this realm we should tackle, or should we move on?
I see some interesting comments going up about thread border routers, and we're still talking about 1 or 2 border routers, but like the idea of the whole thread group is that there will be thread border routers in your whole home. Like in a few years, you buy a fridge and there's a thread border router in there. So in the end, you will have like a whole house coverage, and the thread border routers will be just like adding a new Wi-Fi mesh extender to your home to extend Wi-Fi coverage. That's a bit of the idea behind it. I believe Samsung has released a new TV with a thread border router in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, these thread radios are rather cheap, right? And so they start to put these things everywhere, basically.
Even in the new
yeah,
iPhone,
it
they
remains
don't
to
even know how
be
to use
seen.
it.
It remains to be a bit seen if as the thread group releases new thread versions, right? Which manufacturer are actually going to update their software, their border routers, and how well it will work in this mixed environment. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, all these implementations are based on the same code base, which is the OpenThread code, right? And so I'm quite hopeful that this will work out. But yeah, as usual, if you go cross vendors and stuff, it gets a little bit more complicated and a bit longer until things really take off. Yeah, the Nanoleaf border router. I haven't looked into it. I mean, technically it should also work. Yeah, I haven't looked into it. I think it would be interesting to have these different kind of combinations and start to experiment with it and see what is stable and what not. But
I
in
believe
general,
somebody tested it, and you can actually add like the credentials manually in the upright, like in the 3 dots. I believe somebody tested it. But yeah, test it. Like try it out and see if it works.
Yeah.
But that's like
it's definitely interesting. Just from maybe just to be clear from the Matter perspective, right? If we trying to fix Matter issue, it's usually easier if you also then test that device on a pure setup. Like, okay, just test it on a pure thread Google setup, pure Apple setup, or on a just SkyConnect standalone. Test it in that setup and see if it's stable, and then you know that your device and your that this part is stable, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let's go into a deep dive for Matter and Thread. Oh, I somehow lost my tab here. Okay. I'm not going to talk about Matter protocol specifics in depth. I think there are good how-tos out there. Google has a Matter Primer, which is kind of for developers, and which is really a deep dive into the protocol, and it's really good. I recommend using these resources which are online. So this deep dive is more into kind of what I feel is relevant for Home Assistant and what is relevant to kind of debug real world issues like on your desk, and what I also see when problems appear. I first want to just give a brief overview over the history. I think it's not all that well known. Matter is a huge hype mainly, but just wanted to briefly say how Matter came about. So it was really Amazon, Google, Apple, and Samsung together with the Zigbee Alliance starting the project Connected Home over IP, so in short CHIP, as a working group in December 2019. And then in February 2020, they did the first commit in March 2020. So this is just from the Git history, you actually see that the first C++ code got added, and it had roots in Google Weave. Weave was a protocol which was developed at Google Nest, so like back in the days when, or even before when Nest was its own company. But I don't think there is a lot of Weave in there. So it's not that Weave is an evolution or Matter is an evolution of Weave. It's just that the same people worked on and brought in ideas. And also from the Apple side, right, like HomeKit ideas came into kind of the Matter protocol, but it is largely a from scratch protocol. It's written in C++. And then in 2021, basically the first testing event happened. And in October 2022, Matter 1.0 got released. So to me, working in like software development and trying to, make products, this is blazing fast. Basically within 3 years from like essentially no line of code to products being on the market. To me, it's amazing. Now, of course, Matter 1.0 is maybe not as interesting as some people hoped, and it's not, as stable as some people hoped, but it's there, and it
And
goes.
look at this timeline, right? That's just and this only took 3 years. And do you have any examples how long it took for Zigbee, for example, to be released the first version?
I looked. I think Zigbee. I think the Wikipedia article says they started in the 1990s. I'm not sure. I guess it's towards the end of 1990s. But let's say it's 2000. I don't know. But the standard got the first standard got standardized in 2004, I think. And then, but from there until like you had widespread adoption, it took quite a while, right? For instance, Philips Hue came in 2012. So that's 8 years later. And then IKEA adopted Zigbee in 2017. So that's another 5 years later. The time scale is just much bigger. Back in 2000s, in early 2000s, smart home wasn't as popular also, right? It's just a different world today.
It has to do with Amazon and Samsung and Google getting on board, right? Because like when we were in Geneva, actually sometimes we were scared about the amount of developers and energy that was put in the project. It was like, whoa, this is going fast. This is going, everybody is full in.
Yeah, that's cool to see. Okay, so now what is Matter technically? I mean, it is the open source reference implementation we talk a lot about, right? This is developed by the CSA member companies. It's here on GitHub. It's licensed under the Apache 2.0 license, so that's through open source. There's a free specification, free as in you can download it without paying for it, but it's kind of owned by and developed by the CSA and the member companies. So the latest versions are available. So the latest public versions are available, but like the ones which are worked on are only available for CSA members. It's also developed on GitHub actually, but it's in closed repositories. Then there's a trademark, right? The Matter logo, all that is also owned by the CSA and the certification program to certify a product. It gets a little bit less open sourcey and a bit more corporate-y if you go like down this slide, right? But I think in the end, if you really deal with actual devices, shipping in boxes and whatnot, if you wanna make sure that these devices follow the standard, you kind of need to have the certification program, and the certification program it's largely kind of also kind of bound to the permission to use the Matter logo. So it's just kind of making sure that people follow the standard.
Yeah, if you see the Matter logo on the box, it means the device supports Matter as a protocol, but it also means it has been tested, like certified by the CSA, that it will work in your ecosystem. So it's like a trust brand mark on the box.
Exactly. Now in Home Assistant, we have then the Python Matter server. So this is what Marcel told gets installed in the background. It's an add-on, and the Python Matter server is basically it's stateful. It knows about your devices, and it's a server which runs the WebSocket protocol, which the Home Assistant core then talks to and basically commissions devices and learns about devices. So part of that add-on or part of that Python Matter server, it uses the Matter SDK. And the Matter SDK is a C++ library, but we have Python bindings, which are also part of the upstream Matter SDK. And we use these Python bindings. We build custom wheels basically directly from that source repository. So this repository here actually is mostly a GitHub action logic, which basically just builds the Matter SDK from source. And the Python Matter server takes the controller role. That's at least currently the case. It could also be a commissioner. So technically, it's possible that our Matter server commissions a device directly, talks to a Bluetooth device, for instance. The problem is with doing that, since we run the Python Matter server on your Home Assistant installation, which is usually far away from your devices in a cupboard or something, it's not all that practical to go down that road. And also a problem is that Bluetooth is also used by Home Assistant core itself. We have the Bluetooth support, and we also saw a little bit of problems in arbitration there when both trying to access the local Bluetooth adapter. So currently, this kind of local commissioning is not really what we aim for. Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about commissioning. So commissioning is kind of the process to onboard a device. We had that already before. JLo talked quite a bit. I would like to go a little bit more into the technical details, what happens on the Matter level, basically, during a commission flow. Before you even can commission a device, you need to discover a device. And there are basically 3 methods in the standard how you can discover a Matter device. The first option, and probably the most common for at least, for like traditional devices like this contact sensor here, it's using Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is actually mandatory for thread devices in the standard. So all thread devices need to announce themselves via Bluetooth. Usually then you get the QR code or setup code in your packaging or in your booklet along with the device. So this is kind of the common flow or the common way to discover. And then there is on-network discovery, which works through MDNS or DNS service discovery. So this is basically for devices which are already on the network. For instance, if they had their own app and put them already on the network somehow, like the Wiz bulbs do that. I think, Marcel, you also had one mentioned before.
The bridge,
We
bridges,
forgot to mention bridges do it as well, but there are some devices that upgraded to Matter after the fact. For example, Wiz, you can have like Wiz light bulbs from 4 years ago, and they upgraded the entire product lineup to Matter, but they won't have a QR code. You have to open their app to see the QR code, which is like the same as the bridge. Yeah, we forgot to mention it, that those exist, those devices, but they're like very rare. Most of the times there's the Matter QR code.
Yeah. Then there's a third one, which is basically Wi-Fi soft AP, where a device would announce itself as a soft AP. But I have never seen that. I don't think a device exists which is doing that. So these are basically the ones which are relevant. So what happens during Matter commissioning? So first thing happening is the device discovery. And once you have a device discovery, it goes through all these steps. I'm not going through all these steps. I pick only some. So the QR code is kind of, or the setup code or QR code is really enabling this first connection to the device. So this is setting up a so-called PACE session, which stands for Password Authenticated Session Establishment. So basically, you do an encrypted link to your device already at commissioning time. and then you set up the device so it does these things. This one is basically where a certificate which is specific to your Matter controller or to your Matter network or Matter fabric is. So basically, Home Assistant has its own Matter fabric, and you add a node-specific certificate to the device, basically, so that the device then knows how to basically can talk in an encrypted manner with the Matter controller. Next thing which happens is the network provisioning. So on thread, this basically means sending the thread credentials to the device. On Wi-Fi, sending the Wi-Fi credentials to the device. And that's actually a moment where a lot of issues happen. So this is all usually, so when you do like this type of devices, when you do Bluetooth commissioning, this is all happening through Bluetooth. But here the device is connecting to your thread or Wi-Fi network, and then the commissioner, so your phone, for instance, tries to find that device again on the IP network through thread or through Wi-Fi. And if this step fails here, that usually means that you are on the wrong Wi-Fi. For instance, you are on the 5 gigahertz and 2.4 or a different SSID. Or you are or you maybe your network is not within reach of the thread network, or some of these issues. And then finally, it's actually talking to the device with encrypted with the so-called case session, which stands for certificate authenticated session establishment. So this whole Matter commissioning is done on your phone using the Google or Apple SDK. And when we commission a device using these SDKs from Google and Apple, and this is not even really Matter specific, this is more how Apple and Google decided to design their SDKs, let's say. What happens is that these phones first create a temporary Matter fabric and basically onboard the device completely to your phone, and then share the device to the app you are choosing. So basically, you go through this whole process twice. So you do an onboarding, your Apple or Google phone does an onboarding onto the session, and then onto the temporary Matter fabric. And then from this fabric, it is shared via WebSocket to the Python Matter server, where then the main commissioning with our Matter fabric happens. So this second commissioning is always, the device is always already on the network at that point, right? Because that's the whole point of the first commissioning. You add it to the thread or Wi-Fi network. So in this second phase, we only do an on-network commissioning, basically. But we need to go through all these steps again, and also here issues can happen, right? To make this a little bit more concrete, I'm going to show this. It's a video, but it will make it more clear. So it's actually this device. I just reset this device basically, so it shows up here. I click scan QR code. I scan the QR code, and now I need to select the app. That's maybe also something to note here. Our app is a little bit hidden at this point. You need to basically click on choose other app here, and then you can select Home Assistant. And now it tries to connect to the device, and it creates like a temporary Matter fabric and all these things. So all this is basically the left commissioning, the first commissioning. And when you have issues during this part of the commissioning, it is not Home Assistant related at all, because at this point we don't have any influence in that process. That's your device or your Wi-Fi or the thread border router, which could be the SkyConnect, of course, then it could be on our end, but it's not the Matter server which is the problem. So up to this point, basically, it is under the control of Android, the Android framework. Now, at this point here, that's basically when the first commissioning succeeded. So your device is now on the IP network. It has it can talk to the phone via IP, using IP network. And now the framework is sharing the device using the multi-admin feature of Matter, basically. So it's sharing the device to the Python Matter server or to our server. So you click done here, and now it jumps over to basically Home Assistant. So now the Home Assistant side, our Python Matter server, is trying to search the device, like it's doing the on-network commissioning and does the interviewing and all that. So if you have problems during that phase of the onboarding, you definitely want to check the Python Matter server add-on logs. See if you see something there, maybe enable debug mode, jump on our Discord and ask people what it could be. But yeah, this is like
join
the second.
Discord. Yeah, that's a convenient way to communicate and ask for help. An important one that you just mentioned is like only for the second step, the logging will be present in Home Assistant. Like for the whole first step, that's done by Android, so it won't be logged. Yeah. That's a bit unfortunate, but like, yeah, that's how it works.
So this is how you do it, like from this pop-up which shows up at the very beginning here, like automatically. On Android, it's basically you don't need to go into any app, just that pop-up pops up as soon as this device announces itself through Bluetooth to be ready to be commissioned. There's a second flow. I don't go through that one as well because we're getting late here. Basically, you can initiate also the flow from within the app. So basically, by clicking add new device here inside the Home Assistant app. That works too. It goes through a very, very similar process. It's not 100% the same process, and there are actually bugs in this option. So the pop-up option might be the better choice currently. But in any case, if you open up issues or if you jump on Discord, let us know which one you used. And
there will be an Android app update this week, right?
Yeah, there will be an Android app
fix
update.
This issue.
Yeah. So this is the second way to commission, basically, through the Android app. Okay. I don't think I'm going through that slide because it's probably a bit too much and too late for it.
There have been a few questions about this, so I would like briefly discuss it because I've seen the chat. Some people were asking questions about this. Can I use VLANs and stuff like that? So maybe you should quickly.
Okay. So Matter network requirements. So in general, Matter is an IPv6 protocol. There's no global IPv6 address required, so your ISP does not need to support IPv6. So it's just that the devices which take part or would like to talk to Matter devices or thread devices, they need to support IPv6. At least for Wi-Fi or on Ethernet only devices, link local addressing should actually be sufficient, but we are not 100% sure. It could be that some devices have kinks, like which just makes it not work. If things don't work, try to enable also IPv6 on your router. So basically, that the router will then give all your devices on your network so-called EULA addresses. So from this unique link local address range.
Yeah, just look in your router for some setting called enable IPv6, and that should be sufficient. That's all what it takes, right?
Yeah, and then so routable or unique link local addresses are definitely required when you want to talk to threat devices. In general, Matter makes a lot of use of MDNS and DNS-ST technology, and yeah, by design, MDNS uses link local multicast. That's how it's standardized. That's how the RFC is written. That's how it works. That's how, let's say, standard adhering device kind of behave. So, because every like a single Matter fabric or a Matter network basically has to stay within one network. If you try to separate them into separate VLANs, that really could be problematic. Yeah, there are options like DNS reflectors and whatnot, but it's also a bit more tricky because it's IPv6. You need to be a bit more careful. Link local addresses are quite common in IPv6, and those also don't work well if you try to copy your MDNS packages into other VLANs. So VLANs, yeah. So generally, just make it flat, make it a single network, and then it will work.
Oh yeah, there are questions. What if I want to use an IoT VLAN? Because that's really common with our Home Assistant user base. People want to use an IoT VLAN. Our recommendation is to place like the Home Assistant and the Matter server in that VLAN, right?
Yeah, I mean then it works too, right? If it's really a separate VLAN, just make sure that this is the primary network interface of Home Assistant, and then you should be fine again. Yeah. For Matter over Thread, so these are actually more the requirements if you want to talk to thread networks, because thread networks are like networks or separate networks. The device which wants to talk to them really needs to be able to learn about the existence of that other thread network. And the way this works is through IPv6 router advertisement. That's an IPv6 standard, which basically allows a host to learn about other thread networks or about other IPv6 networks more generally. Some network managers actually process these IPv6 router advertisements in user space, like Network Manager and Systemd, Networkd. And yeah, it is a little bit a mess, especially under Linux when it comes to support for that. Also, the Linux kernel has native support, but it requires syscontrol options to get it working. And then there's one more thing. If one of these routers, so these thread border routers, go offline, basically you wanna make sure that you detect that early, and for that you want to have IPv6 reachability probe enabled. That allows you to, when a thread border router goes offline, that basically your Matter server quickly realizes that that thread border router is no longer online and switches to the other one. So this is enabled by default in Linux, but it is disabled if IPv6 forwarding is enabled. Long story short, if you want to have no problems, use Home Assistant OS. We debug these problems. We added patches and made sure that these things work. Even if you don't want to use Home Assistant OS, that's fine too. But when you have issues, please spin up a Home Assistant OS in your in a virtual environment or on a Raspberry Pi or something. Give it a go just to see if this fixes the problem. Because sometimes, when we already have learned about these problems, it's kind of annoying if we debug it twice and need to figure it out again, right? So just use Home Assistant OS also as a test bed, so to kind of see. So if it works on Home Assistant OS and it doesn't work on your container installation or supervised installation, then okay, it might be a difference there. and then we can look into this. Some of these things are also documented actually on the Python Matter server GitHub repository if you want to have the technical details. Yeah, this is it from my side.
Yeah, it was like a very technical deep dive, but I think it's needed, right? Because like we went like the easy way to explain what matter and thread is, but you also see in the chat itself, you see a lot of technical questions coming up. So that's why we asked Stefan to go this deep, into the details, because people were requesting these kind of details. We've been dealing for Matter now for a year, me and Stefan. We worked through a lot of issues, and yeah, and that's why we just say, okay, use Home Assistant OS. We've been squashing bugs forever, and use that as the starting point. We provide some instructions to run the Matter server on Docker as well, but like try it or use it if you have confirmed that it works on Home Assistant OS. Use that as your starting point. If that works for you, be my guest to like go wild with freelance and Docker containers yourselves, but like start easy and start with tested routes, which are the routes me and Stefan already tested for over a year now. So that was just a hint or a tip. And join like the Discord channel of Home Assistant. We have a Matter channel and a Thread channel. Thread is more like talking about SkyConnect, your own border routers. And the Matter channel is everything about Matter. And we see some issue reports being created on the GitHub issue tracker, but the GitHub issue tracker is more for like tracking bugs or whatever. So often we just ask you to hop over to Discord, because there we can help out each other and ask for logs and yeah, make it a conversation, except if you actually discover a bug, because there are still bugs. I'm pretty sure of that.
Shall we spend a bit of time on the questions, or do
Yes, that's a good idea.
There is actually an interesting one from Josh Witt. I thought we can answer.
Can you
how is Nabu-Casa? How is Nabu-Casa contributing to Matter and Threads development and direction? I can say I have maybe if you can put up my
sorry.
So we work, for instance, on the thread side.
You are. Yep, that's on your side. Yes.
Yeah. So on OpenThread, we contribute to the upstream project to make it work for our add-on and so on. So we have a couple of patches already contributed. Also, we use a REST API to talk to the OpenThread server, which we integrated with Home Assistant Core. And so we are part now of, or we are considered as a OpenThread contributor at that point, which is kind of cool. We are not in the thread group at this moment, and we're also not really steering the direction of thread, but we are kind of a open source participant on that end. Yeah, on the Matter side, maybe Marcel, you can go a little bit more into it. I mean, we are part of the CSA, right?
We are part of the CSA, and we're. I don't know if you've read it, but me and Stefan actually went to Geneva for one of those CSA events. There are multiple a year. Because we are in Europe, right? We try to join the Europe ones, and that's where like discussions happen. We get involved in discussions. We can like be in contact with other members of the CSA. Yeah, that was the story. Nice to show. And it's very interesting for me to be there, because otherwise we would have like followed along or like just get the news in our face and then be done with it. But now we can actually join the conversations, and now often we're asked into the conversations, and we're actually also contributing back to the project. So Stefan already did like lots of commits to the Matter SDK project when he found some bugs, or when we were tracking some issues, and being a part of the CSA makes it happen that we can like be on top of the game. We're part of the discussions. We're part of like the stand-up sessions between all the developers that are working on the project. We have direct lines, so it's really helpful. It's really helpful, and we were like like really mind blown about the speed this is going. Like so many developers of Google, Apple, and all these companies involved, and I believe every day, like multiple companies are joining the CSA to get on board with Matter. It's like it's amazing. So we're really like grateful that we as Nabu Casa could actually join the CSA, and me and Stefan. For me and Stefan, it's really helpful that we have this direct access lines to developers from Google, Apple, or whatever to like discuss some topics, or how can we do this, or how can we do that. So yeah, that's really awesome.
I have a question. I have a question. I
Oh,
want
you
to
have
pick.
a question.
Yes,
You have
it's
a
a it's a random one, but I actually don't know the answer, and I just want to know: is there any limitation on the number of thread devices, border routers, bridges on the network? Because I know that
Stefan?
it's a big topic for Zigbee and Z-Wave.
It's going to
I
be
actually
big,
not
yeah.
sure. There are probably like some high technical,
Yeah.
numbers, but I'm not sure what the practice, what it is
Sky.
in practice, basically. Yeah.
The sky is the limit. No, I've heard the numbers somewhere, but it's like theoretical numbers or whatever. It's really designed to be the next level standard. So
How many devices do you have, Marcel, on Zigbee? Just on Zigbee?
on Zigbee, yes, I have like 180 devices or so,
Nice.
whatever. I'm not a Matter adopter myself, still, like because I think that's one of the questions as well. One of the questions we hear a lot, and I saw it in the chat like 3 times already. Why didn't you make Home Assistant itself a Matter bridge? Which it kind of makes sense if we could do that. Like, but I think the most important answer is we already have better ways to do that because we have an excellent way to expose your entities to Google Home or Alexa or Apple. And the current integrations in Home Assistant are more feature rich than the Matter specification because Matter is just getting started. So to me, it doesn't make sense to spend our limited development capacity to creating a bridge. I kind of get the point of creating it, but like, yeah, you should just use Home Assistant, right? And the multi-admin feature of Matter also makes it possible to share a device between multiple ecosystems. So the need is a bit less. So yeah, it's just a matter of capacity. We do not have the capacity to do this now, but we understand that there's a need. But yeah, I think there are a few like projects already out there that are trying to bridge things through Node-RED or whatever. So you could use that if you want. Stefan, you already answered this one, right?
We are not sharing any slides, by the way. Do you want me to share slides, Marcel?
I'm not sure. Yes, no, well, I can do that.
This
is another question that's been asked a lot. Why do you really need Home Assistant operating system to run Matter? But I think we answered it because we tweaked it in every way.
Actually, we answered it so much that we actually stopped writing the answer. What's that last sentence? To limit the...
No, we asked it like 3 times. I don't know.
It seems this is an old version, but how can that be? For me, it goes further.
It's the cloud. The cloud that stopped working. We should have a local.
I can share mine. If we want to go all the slides, I can share mine. Bam. Wow, we have the end.
You have the.
But this is also a different version. Why is my version different?
I'm going to refresh the slide one last time.
This is.
Now everything is everything is wrong when I'm sharing. I'm sorry, that's my bad.
Well, Stefan, just start talking. But I think we already explained it a lot. Why we promote the Home Assistant operating system.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I actually didn't realize that I shared one. Yeah, I think that's basically what I said, right? We tweaked quite a lot, and so that's why ideally, I mean, you can install the add-on also on supervised, right? And there is also the container option. Yes, you can make it work that way. It's just too many variables in the system at one point makes it really hard to actually debug problems. So for issue reports, try to reproduce them on Home Assistant OS just so we kind of know on what base we are on.
Do we have
Then
another
I
one?
think the next one, yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of dipping into this, right? Because just asked me about my Zigbee network. I have a Zigbee network which works perfectly fine. Should I now like trash my Zigbee devices and hop to Matter? I don't think so, because like Zigbee and Z-Wave are not going anywhere, and Matter is not meant to be a replacement. It's meant to be the next gen specification. But if I were to go shopping, for example, a vacuum cleaner, I would definitely look at a Matter compatible vacuum cleaner, because that would be local controllable.
Yeah.
For now, I do not know any vacuum cleaner that has a local API, only the obscure like cloud-based ones. So, and another scenario when I would go shopping for Matter devices is if I'm new to the whole smart home world. If I'm like just dipping my toes into smart home and like, okay, what should I do? What should I use? Then I would not go for any existing protocol. I would just hop to Matter directly. So that's the honest like advice we can give. And no, do not trash your existing device. There's really no need for it, and Matter will not make it any better or whatever. For instance, it will make it worse because like the features missing. So no, but there are use cases that it's suitable. Stefan, this one for you.
Yeah, why is Matter considered privacy friendly and secure while it is IP based? I think it always depends a little bit what you compare it against. I mean, of course, if you think about the Z-Wave or Zigbee network, which is by default kind of firewalled or like in a separate, environment, kind of firewalled by that one controller. Sure, being on the same network kind of makes it maybe an easier target or attack surface. But then the cryptographic protocol is really up to nowadays standards. So this is good, right? And in the end, it really is the question to what do you compare, right? Like a hardwired light bulb is even more privacy and even safer from like a network security perspective, right? So why don't you even use smart devices? But I think this is mostly also meant compared to Wi-Fi based bulbs, which are connected to proprietary clouds, right? And I think for these type of devices, Matter is a much better option. It's much more privacy friendly, and it is also future proof because it's a local API which cannot go offline when the cloud goes offline.
Yeah. That's
The
what
vendor.
I saw some comments coming by, like because it's IP based, in potential the device could talk to the internet or whatever, but you can just block it from talking to the internet and it will keep on working, because we as a controller will talk locally to the device over your own local network. So it's as secure as your firewall would be, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, I think Stefan, this question is also be answered by you the best, right?
Yeah. Why do I need the add-on to run Matter? Yeah, it's a little bit, we need to know what kind of environment your system is on, otherwise it gets hard to support. And the add-on just allows us to kind of easily integrate it with the core, so the core knows about where to find the Matter server and connect to it, and it is on the same kind of operating environment. So yeah, that's basically the gist. Why is, technically we could also integrate the whole Matter SDK into the core. That's not really
not that.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but it is just from an architecture, it's kind of easier to separate it out, like the whole handling of the protocol into a separate process.
Well, people that are around with Home Assist for many years maybe remember the old Z-Wave integration, which had the Z-Wave SDK integrated into Home Assistant, and it was awful because it was blocking Home Assistant as a automation controller with startup and shutdown and restarts, and it actually also took the Z-Wave network down while you were quickly restarting Home Assistant for a quick config change. So it's actually a good thing to like separate the automation part from the control part, and that's a bit of the philosophy behind hosting the Matter controller. But we did the same with Z-Wave, hosting it in its own process, its own isolated process. It's an architectural choice.
Yeah, and I think somebody asked at one point Matter.js. I mean, yeah, why not? Maybe sometime in the future, like replace the server with a Matter.js version.
Yeah, it's always possible. And actually, the guys working on Matter.js, they are going fast, and they have recreated the whole thing from scratch, right? It's an amazing project. And they're hosted in the official repository actually now, right? In the org.
In the official org, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I saw another interesting question. I don't know if we have it. Like, and this one is also interesting, but I see a lot of questions. I think I saw it 10 times already about updating devices or using an app specific for the device. Do we have it?
I think that we also have in this FAQ.
Cool.
So last one. Yeah.
Cool.
For now, we can go step by step, and we will have all the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's go through these ones, and then we can maybe go back to YouTube. So this one, can I build a DIY Matter device, or can I use ESP Home to build a Matter device? So since the Matter SDK, the official SDK, is open source, it also has actually sample code in there. And so you can build Matter devices using ESP, for instance, for ESP32, using the ESP IDF just fine with it. There are even test IDs and certificates in the Matter SDK. They work also with our controllers. They also work with the Google controllers. I think you need to enable developer mode, or you need to add the test device identifier to the developer console on the Google end. But it works. It's quite open. It's quite hackable. Let's say you can do your own DIY devices.
Arduino launched a device today, right? Based on the official Matter SDK.
Okay.
Yes, just today it was announced somewhere. I've read it somewhere that you can buy like an Arduino-based device and you can hack your own Matter sensor or whatever. So that's really cool.
Give me a sec. I can share it quickly, even if it's just like a page. Yes, share screen. This.
Yeah. So that's good news.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean, we also have this Matter example apps repository. It's in the Nabucasa org. We showed that like last year when there were almost no actual Matter devices around, we used those quite a bit to do development, and it still exists. It's not that well maintained, but you still can flash some of these examples onto ESP32 devices and run them and commission them. Yeah.
This is my most used Matter device. Like back in the day, there were no Matter devices, so we were all testing on this one, like a small ESP thing, and it was my light bulb, and it was my thermostat. It was everything.
Just like the last sentence of that sensor is important. So, can you DIY Matter device? Yes. Can you use ESP Home? Not for now, because ESP Home does not support Matter. But if you want to do it, then you can contribute.
I think it would be an interesting option. Basically, somewhere in your YAML, you just say,
by the way, it's Matter.
Matter, yes, and then it would just, because I think the YAML description, I mean, some of the devices you described there, you could probably map to Matter one-to-one. I guess it's a bit more challenging than it sounds at first, but it would be definitely an interesting project. How are firmware updates managed with Matter? We'll be able to do them via Home Assistant, and we'll do will we need the Eve app, Nanoleaf app, and so on to update devices? So firmware updates is supported by the Matter standard. It is in the Matter standard. Firmware update is a thing in Matter. In fact, also there is also a way to basically store them in the DCL, in the distributed ledger online, basically. And you can download the firmwares cryptographically prove that this is the correct version or the correct file, like it, and then basically download it to your device. Now, it is not mandatory, so it will depend what vendors are going to do with it. I know that Eve is using that feature, and I know that Apple is actually supporting firmware updates through it. So basically, even though you need, well, with Eve and Apple, it's a bit complicated. I think you still need to use the Eve app, but it uses the Android feature of the Matter feature of Apple to do then
but theoretically, the Matter controller itself could implement the update feature. We
so
will at
ours
some point
could
as well. Yeah, but like it's also like development capacity, so we will implement at some point. I think the main problem with this one is that the most parties that now have adopted Matter devices are the ones that have existing protocols or existing devices. So, with the only exception, Eve is doing like completely Matter all in, like including the auto updates. But I think the next batch of Matter device, which will be pure Mat without its own app, they will have like the updates over the Matter server as well. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm hopeful because that's what would make the difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
let's hope. I think, we are at the end. That's the last FAQ.
That was long, right? 2 hours and 35 minutes.
And I had so much more planned. I wanted to show like my great setup. I actually cleaned my desk, and
we can bring back the desk.
I prepared like it was like a scenery. I prepared like with all these devices and the Matter logo, and it was like okay.
Before you ask, the ESP33 S3 box is just there for the bling.
For fun.
Yes, it's
not
a
Matter. I
like
it. No, and even last minute before the live stream, I'm gonna grab the camera. I was sent this. Can I like show this camera?
Yeah, but don't move a lot, otherwise we're going to fall.
No, I will keep it slow.
Okay,
you can see anything, but it's like.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Yeah.
This is like an how is it called? Like the motion light, an Eve motion light, a shade, and it was sent to me by Eve motion lines and I hang it up. I edited to Home Assistant. It worked instantly. It was like super awesome. I wanted to show it in the live stream, but we ran out of time. But like, it's awesome.
That's pretty good.
So, and that's like to conclude. At first, like a year ago, we had like lots of devices with issues. We still have, by the way. I didn't mention a certain brand up until now. I'm not gonna do it. But like, it's making our life miserable. But at first, there was a lot of experimenting, and now we actually get into a state that devices are available that they actually work. Like this motion, like I scanned the QR code, it was added to Home Assistant. It was like, okay, great, this is actually something that works. So we're getting into that state. So yeah, there's hope, and we are excited. But yeah, let's be realistic together.
Cool. Shall we close the stream?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you
for all the great questions.
Yes. See you.
Thanks for keeping out with us like 2.5 hours. There are people still watching us for all this time. So that's like, wow.
Yeah, and if you have troubles, jump on Discord. There's hash Matter. There is hash thread.
I need to put that because we didn't say it during the stream, but I need to put that.
We need to. Can I use this feature with it also? I don't know.
Yes, maybe the reactions from Mac. I don't know if I have them. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
All right. Like a small promo next week, same time, hopefully less long. We will do like a voice assistant contest. It's going to be announced. It has been announced during the chapter 5. It will be announced tomorrow. So stay tuned. Next week, another live stream, voice related. Cool. See you.
See
Bye-bye.
you. Have a
Thanks.
great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.